Back table there, they're too busy working, I guess. The far back table. Anyway, my name is Richard Weir. I'm one of the Master Gardeners with Fort Bend County Master Gardeners. I'm delighted you all have come out on this wonderful morning, and you're in store for a really great presentation on fruit trees. My name is Richard Weir again. I am current chair of the Grow Your Own series, and again want to welcome you all. This is our second of 7 classes on growing a productive edible garden in the home landscape. The program is a part of the Texas Master Gardener program in Fort Bend County. We work in close partnership with Texas A&M's AgriLife Extension Agency. For those of you who are new to us, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension provides research-based educational programs and outreach services to Texas communities through their county offices. We're fortunate here to be guided by Jody Taylor, who is our Fort Bend County Extension Agent for Horticulture, and Brandy Rader, our Program Coordinator. I'd also like to take at this moment a thank you to Tony, who's with Fort Bend County Fairgrounds, who unlocked everything for us, or we would be outside. Our volunteers, who we could not do this without, as well as Nancy Utek in the back there, who's my boss and keeps me in line. A couple of housekeeping items. I thought the bathrooms were outside down the road and found out they were locked. They're just in the back. So someone pointed out we don't have to leave the room for the bathrooms. We ask that you silence your phones and keep any side conversations to a minimum. We will be sending out a link to this presentation within a week. It will include any links that may be included in the presentation. So I know some people I've seen in the past are taking pictures of the screen or trying to write down madly the links. You won't need to do that. They'll be provided for you. Our next class is going to be on March 14th. It will be back over by the Extension Agency area in the Bud O'Shields Conference Center. It will be on growing warm weather vegetables and herbs, and that's always a good one. Today's presentation is on fruit trees, so if you're looking for something else, it's probably in another part of this fairgrounds. It's a very timely presentation because next Saturday we will be having our fruit tree sale. It's an absolute wonderful event, but also a very chaotic event because a lot of people show up, and sometimes they show up before we show up. You're also invited to come to our demo gardens, which are in that way. We recently created a new fruit tree section, so you can see all the work that was put into that and some examples of some of the trees that will be available on February 14th. Okay, now our presenter. I have the pleasure of presenting to you Angela Chan. She is a CPA and the CFO of Smart Financial Credit Union. She started gardening in 2015 and became a master gardener in 2019. She calls herself, I don't believe this, a lazy gardener, and prefers to grow what thrives here without a ton of input, and laments that her husband and 2 adult children do not share more of her love for the garden other than at harvest time, and probably consuming them as well. I had the privilege of being in her class in 2019 and was always in awe of both her depth of knowledge as well as the variety of plants that she seemed to have. She kept saying, oh yeah, I've got this in my backyard, oh I know about that, and so on and so on, and I felt very jealous. You are in for a very informative talk, and please join me in welcoming Angela Chan.
Thank you, Richard. Richard, as my classmate, is one of the most funniest human beings to be with. So thank you for being part of this program and for the introduction. Welcome to the class. Fruit trees. What do you think about when you go grocery shopping. You see wonderful selections. Well, today we'll talk about a lot of the fruit trees for the most part, but we'll talk about some of the less pleasant things like the weather and soil and fertilizing and disease management, yike. But they all come with the wonderful fruits. So what type of fruits do we get to grow here? Or what we see that we want to grow here? Well, there are a lot of them. They're temperate fruits, tropical fruits, subtropical fruits. Temperate fruits usually grows with some levels of cold. You hear the word cold hardy quite a bit. You hear the word chill hours or the phrase chill hours. Those are the two things relating to cold that we Southerners don't really care about, but we really do need to mind the business of them, because without worry about them, you may, like me, spend 6 years growing a cherry tree and have 3 flowers, 0 fruit, and after 6 years of tending to them, I'm like, this trial is over, goodbye, darling. I will welcome a new love somewhere. I don't know what yet, but you're going. So, temperate fruits had a lot that we are very familiar with, apple being one of them. They are here all year long in our grocery stores, but guess what? They don't really grow all year long. Subtropicals, we see a lot of them. Banana. But how many people see successful bananas grow over here? Every once in a while I do. And in years past, I've seen them even hanging on the plant along streets. But by and large, there's some challenge to them, but they can be successful. Citrus, who doesn't love citrus? Also, they're widely available all year long. There's so many different varieties. We'll dig deeper into them. Subtropicals, we see more and more of them in the grocery stores. There's more interest in them, and they're more and more being offered. So when we talk about climate to grow the different fruit trees, the picture on the left is widely known. You see the world map. North and south are the coldest regions. Somewhere in the middle is the subtropical. Had the little teeny tiny strip here. That's the subtropical region. And then you have the tropical region in the middle. So you can see the smaller band of the subtropical region. Sometimes the plants tended towards the tropical side, sometimes you tended toward the temperate side. And trees sometimes are really hard to classify because guess what? Weather is not very consistent, they're not predictable. They like to play. On the right hand side, you see this picture, Köppen-Geiger climate classification map. It divides the climate into 5 different types. A for tropical, B for arid, C for temperate, D for continental, and E for polar. And then you see those little symbols at the bottom there. The first letter is the 5 types, and then the smaller letters denotes the seasonal precipitation. So that helps a little bit more. So from those 3 major classifications, now with 5 plus some subclasses, well, that still is not helpful enough, really, right? For tree growers. So wonderful USDA since 1927 has developed cold hardiness map. It started with 8 zones, now goes to 13 zones, plus 2 subzones each, so we technically have 26. That helps a lot because now it gives us some minimal temperature, average minimal temperature in a zone. And when you go to the grocery store or nursery rather, and you picked up a fruit tree with a tag on there, somewhere in the back or the front, you will see hardiness, right? That's the lowest temperature you will withstand. This one for Myers Lemon, this particular label says 30. And then some of the labels you'll see both a hardiness label and also a zone label, like this one. And it has both the lowest temperature and the range of the zones where the fruit trees will grow well, pay attention to that, because you don't want to pick up something where you cannot really enjoy a successful fruit tree to where you actually have fruits that hangs on you can harvest, because you might grow like my lovely cherry. It's beautiful every year. It lives up and it looks beautiful. It's a wonderful ornamental, but it's not a fruit tree, even though that's what I bought it for. So where do you go find out the zone that we're in? Well, by and large, Fort Bend County is in Zone 9B. It used to be 9A, and I went to the website and put in some zip codes. You can see the left side is Missouri City, Katy, Sugar Land. Most of Fort Bend County is in 9B now. But where we are right now, this is actually 9A, 77471. This is actually 9A. And it also tells you historically where the zones were classified. So this one is 9B and used to be 9A. This one's 9A to 9A. This is helpful, again, for us to select the right kind of fruit trees. And this additional website, texaset.temu.edu, also can provide us some estimation of the chill hours. So for this year, there are different methods of calculating it, but this year it's somewhere around 300 to 400 chill hours. Two methods of calculating chill hours. One is a range between 32 and 45. The other is lower than 45. There's some research going on about how many hours below 32 might take away from actual chill hour calculation. But anyway, we're not scientists. We're here just to grow fruit trees and enjoy the fruit of our labor. So go with whichever one that's easiest for you. We all know about fruit trees, what they look like in general. One thing to really remember is to protect the cambium layer right here. This is the layer where cells will grow inwards to be the softwood, sapwood, or you can grow outwards and become bark. Protect the tree's cambium layer, because without that, the tree doesn't have the cells to divide and grow a healthy plant. You see on that picture on the top, where there are a lot of weed eater damages, tree gets weak, ultimately it will die a lot sooner than what it's supposed to. So you can protect it with some tree guards, whatnot. Also, protect from our lovely, lovely, wonderful, very, very hot sun during the summer. I have many trees with gigantic burns on them because I didn't protect them when they were younger. So if the side that's facing the southern exposure, if you can paint them, protect them with a guard, that helps a lot, especially when the trees are younger and it's a lot weaker. It can offend itself as much. Now, when you go to buy a fruit tree, most of them are grafted. Some will be on their own roots. The reason why fruit trees are grafted is for a lot of different benefits: to control the size, for disease management, water nutrient uptake. Some the rootstocks are native, so it's supposed to grow here. So when you have the fruit tree that you want grafted on top, the fruit can grow and take the nutrient from the good rootstock, but not have to deal with a climate and a soil that is less preferred, right? Because a lot of this don't naturally grow here in our climate and our environment. How do you tell if there's no label? Usually you would see a label like this. This one says Flying Dragon rootstock, right? Not every single fruit tree that we buy has one. You can easily tell whether or not a fruit tree is grafted by looking at the trunk. Usually a few inches above the root ball, you will see there's a little bit of an indentation. That's where the rootstock was cut, and then the scion was inserted, and they were taped and grown together for a few years before they're sold to us. For most of us, other than the dwarfing rootstocks and standard rootstocks, we really don't have much of a choice of any other rootstocks we have. For example, you may have a Nemagar rootstock. For peaches, you have multiple different rootstocks, but we don't really get to choose. Apple has like M111 and M7 rootstocks again. We don't really get to choose. Whatever the nurseries have available, we buy them. So focus on whether or not you want more of a standard size or dwarfing one. This is really the one where the labels are coming in really helpful. Now, the other consideration for fruit trees is whether you can just buy one. If you have limited space, and you will grow fruits on its own because it's self-fertile. Or you need a pollinator. And I try to classify them, and you can see there's a little dot on several different items on both sides, because guess what? Fruit trees don't want to follow rules, just like human beings. Who follows rules? You drive 65 on the freeway all the time? No, I don't. Right, nobody wants to follow rules 100% of the time because we're just love to have fun. Well, fruit trees too, and a lot of them, even within the same species, where all of them are supposed to be either self-fertile, you have some like Boo's plum requires a fertilizer, even though most plum trees are self-fertile. So do read the labels for that, and usually the label will give you some detail. If not, you do your research before you purchase, because if it requires a fertilizer, you need a clinic several feet away. Do you have that much space? Here in Fort Wayne County, a lot of us probably have bigger backyard, but I'm in the urban side of the county, and my tiny backyard don't really have a lot of space for several trees that require pollinators. So either you can buy one that's grafted with multiple varieties on them, so one tree will pollinate everything that's grafted on it, or you just need to make sure that you've got the other variety, and also pick the pollinating variety that's compatible. They need to flower around the same time. Otherwise, one tree finish flowering, the other tree starts while it's not pollinating anything because they have different seasons, right? It doesn't help. So make sure you do your research. Now, last for choosing fruit trees. We've talked about all of these other factors. Well, I love growing figs, but from talking to a lot of people, that's not necessarily a favorite fruit of everybody's. But I grow them because it's practical, and I do actually personally enjoy eating them. But you can have a whole backyard garden full of figs if you don't want them. You don't want jam, you don't want anything to do with them. Well, too bad, so sad, right? Your neighbors, the wilderness will come and claim them for you, but you're gonna do all the work for nothing. So grow what's practical, what you would enjoy eating. Also, if you do have a lot of them, we talk about flower period, but also the ripening period. Sequence out your ripening time. Fruit trees is a long-term investment because it takes years for them to establish, years for them to really start flowering and produce good fruit. And you wanted to make sure that when they all ripen, if you want to eat them fresh, you don't want to have 2 bushels of them waiting for you to consume within a matter of a week, right? And if you wanted to do a party and gift them and whatnot, that's great. But if you want to have a prolonged season, buy the fruit trees that will have sequence ripening, so you can have a long season of fruit trees to enjoy. Now, one other thing is amount of time. I'm a lazy gardener, even though I do actually do a lot of work because, hey, maintenance is work. But I don't want to do more than I have to. So grow the things that will produce for you, right? Why you want to put energy into something that doesn't put out for you? Unless you just enjoy the exercise, by all means, come help me, please. And our demo garden after you become a master gardener. But so there are different requirements, and some of them really do require a lot of babying. But of course, again, at the end of the day, enjoying the fruit of your labor may be rewarding enough. Apple will have Anna and Dorset Golden. Both are wonderful low-chill variety apples. They are also delicious. I have a multi-grafted tree that have both of them on there, and those are the only two. It started out with 4 different varieties, and I get flowers on all of them. But these two are the ones that reliably flower and fruit. They do also have lots of disease on them. They're delicious, but I am lazy, so I don't really treat them as much as I should. So I don't ever get a perfect fruit except when they're teeny tiny. Talking about teeny tiny, they flower a lot, and most of the flowers will bear little fruits, and guess what? You gotta think them out. If you have a branch with 4 or 5 little apples hanging on there, guess what? You're gonna have 4 or 5 teeny tiny apples. Wouldn't you rather think them out and have one really good apple, good bigger size apple, or 5 tasting apple, right? But that's a lot of work again, and you want to think them out as soon as you can when they're teeny tiny. I mean, it's even better if you can pinch out the flowers, but they're in such a clutter. If you try to pinch them out, you may damage the other flowers. So take them away from your branch as early as you can. That way the nutrients are not divided to the fruits that will eventually come off. They're self-fertile and definitely wonderful one to try. Here we have a lot of different varieties available. Some of them European origin, some of them Asian origin, some of them hybrid. The one I have at home is Acres Home, and it's a wonderful, beautiful little tree. It's a flower pear that has a European origin somewhere in the Acres Home area of Houston. So great, native to Houston, even though origin travels overseas. We will have hybrid kefir and tendersoy. They are within our chill hour zone, so you can definitely try them. Pears are naturally susceptible to fire blight in the rootstocks. That most of the fruit trees that we get are grafted on one that's much more resistant to fire blight than others. So I have not seen them a whole lot, but if you do see them, you gotta cut out the whole branch and make sure you dispose of it properly. There is no true cure. You can spray them and whatnot to prevent them, but once the bacteria gets on them, that little branch is gone. Yes?
Are you able to make your own breed of pear, like your own hybrid of pear, or?
So the question is whether or not you can breed your own hybrid pear. Yes, absolutely. You can experiment. It takes a long time to grow a tree from seed, and a lot of times people who have a fruit that they enjoy eating and they grow a tree out of that seed don't necessarily know the parentage of that fruit. Even though it comes from a tree, you know, reason being, you don't know what it is pollinated by. You may have your neighbor has a different tree and it pollinated your tree, so you can have the fruit that was hanging on your tree that you know. But whether or not that DNA, we think the pear is truly that pear is not fully guaranteed. And that's why the science labs in a lot of the A&M universities have to have control environments where they really tested out different DNAs of the fruit trees and select out of all of the different varieties they have which one produced best before they do trials with commercial growers, before they bring them to market. It's a long time investment in developing new varieties of hybrids. Pear naturally don't like wet feed, so make sure you don't overwater. And the other way around, they are somewhat tolerant of water, but no plant love to sit in anything wet for a prolonged period of time. I don't care how tolerant it is. In our soil, black gumbo, water sits and sits and sits. So if you have it sitting a lot of water for a prolonged period of time, guess what happens? No oxygen, right? The root rot, doesn't breathe, and it's gonna have a shorter life. We don't want to be wet all the time, do we? We enjoy swimming. We enjoy a lot of water activity, but if you have to soak in the swimming pool for days, I don't know, your skin don't look very good, right? And pear grows actually don't pretty well without a ton of fertilizer, partly because if you have a lot of fertilizer, it grows a lot of plant material. It branches, leaves. My pear, I have not actually watered it much, fertilizing much, and every year it grows about 10, 12 feet in terms of height for the branches, and I can't reach them. Anything that grows on the top, the birds get to them and whatnot, right? And if you have to treat them, you can't spray that high. So keep and maintain your trees a little bit more within control would be helpful. Peaches and nectarines are some of the most wonderful stone fruits. It's an ancient fruit native to northwest China, and we don't know the difference between a peach and a nectarine, right? Hairy skin versus smooth skin. By and large, they're very similar. But with peaches and nectarines, the interesting thing is about the pit in the middle, what we call the stone fruit. Some of them stick to your fruit like there's no tomorrow. They never want to separate. Others kind of like, you give it a little push and the seed can come out. Others, you don't even have to do much of anything. It just hangs freezing there. So depending on what your preference is in eating, you may want to pick a variety that either has the free stone or semi-free, semi-clinging. Most of the varieties are self-fertile, and the varieties that we have that are in bold, May Pie, Mid Pie, Eva's Pie, they grow really well here. If you ever had the chance of eating peaches off of your own trees, I can tell you firsthand that it's one of the most beautiful experiences. I have never eaten a peach from any kind of whole food or organic store or even farm stand. That's better than the one I got out of my own garden, where I literally get it off of the tree and I eat it right there. It is such a wonderful experience, and it actually bears pretty early and can have a lot of production if you feed it and tend to it well. The lovely trees I have that has multiple grafts, it has all of these varieties, the May Pie, Mid Pie, Eva's Pie, even August Pie. Multi-grafted tree did not survive for very long. It's also susceptible to a lot of diseases. But I enjoyed it while it lasts, so by all means, fruit trees have a finite life. We have finite life. Thank goodness, we are way longer living than most fruit trees. So you have a chance of trying out a lot of different things for the joy of it. Yes, ma'am.
Can you pick the peaches when they're still green before the birds get to them and let them ripen in the house?
It wouldn't be very good, even if they do continue to ripen.
It would be what?
It wouldn't be very good, right? So you want to pick, if you have to pick them early at the first blush where they start turning, right, to the sugar content. But part of the reason why you want to grow them in your own garden is so that you can pick it at the best time instead of, well, I'm just gonna put it in the house and let it go. Yes, sometimes you do, but if you can protect it with a mash bag and whatnot, or net it when after it fruits, so you don't need insects or pollination, and you can protect it that way, it would be much better. But yes, birds, squirrels are kind of true nuisance, where this is where I don't mind killing. Did I just say that?
I have a question about peaches.
Yes.
You were saying about feeding it. What do you have to? Do you feed it every year if it's in the ground? Peaches.
So there is a feeding cycle where we call the feed during season of love. You feed it around next Saturday, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and what is the other love? Master Garden, help me there.
Memorial.
Father's Day.
Memorial.
We don't, because it's too close to Mother's Day.
Labor Day.
Before that.
Before that.
Right, so you feed it when it starts to leaf out, when it's flowering, and when it's fruiting. After it fruits, you don't want to feed it because you don't want vegetative growth. You want it to actually start to rest. That's why all of these seasons are actually early, right? And then after it grows, some of the fruit trees you may want to start pruning. I do summer pruning to control size because, again, I don't want a 25 feet tall tree. I want to be able to stay on the ground, maybe a little step ladder, and I could go in and harvest instead of trying to bang the branch over and get injured and whatnot. And so, again, we're in the home orchard environment, not a commercial environment. We don't have equipment that goes up to 25, 35 feet to harvest fruits, or have the equipment available to actually grab the tree and shake it and everything drops. Does that answer your question in related to fertilization? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of slides ago, we were mentioning about pinching flowers off.
I'm sorry?
Did you mention pinching flowers?
Yes, thinning things out. Thinning things out. If they are well separated, you can thin out flowers. The problem is the ones you have left may or may not get pollinated and turn into fruit. So thinning out flowers, except for, I would say, citrus, because they're so fragrant and they're so abundant, I typically thin them out when I see little fruits. And I keep the biggest fruit on the cluster, and I think out everything else around it, because now you know which one fruits. So there are other stone fruits that you can try. Plum is one where I mentioned earlier. Mostly self-fertile, and they're really wonderful, tasty. I have Black Beauty. I have not tried out Medley or Santa Rosa or Hollywood that we will offer next week. But from what I'm hearing from other master gardeners, they're also all wonderful. They're highly prolific. In my garden, right before the freeze, my Black Beauty was already blooming profusely. It continued to bloom through the entire freeze. It's still blooming. So I expect to see some fruits forming pretty soon. Pluot is a hybrid of plum and apricot, so Pluot. And then nectar plum is a hybrid of nectarine and plum. Try those. Those are from what other master gardeners and producers are sharing, very, very good options if you see them available. Blueberries, quintessential, truly American fruit, grows really well in northern part of the United States. The thing about blueberries is that this is one of the plants that love acidic soil, and our black gumbo soil is slightly alkalinic. You will have to amend your soil if you are growing it in the ground, and the recommendation is that you grow them in a raised bed so you can actually put in the right kind of soil. You can amend existing soil with pine bark, but from one of the fruit tree conference class that we learned not all pine barks are made the same. Also, some of them has a higher acidic content, others don't. So just when you do amend them, make sure you amend them and you test them. And but we'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about the growing part of it. But everything that you do is to ultimately have success in producing fruit, and make sure you test the pH of the soil. Use rainwater. Most of our city water, municipality waters are treated, and it has a lot of pouring minerals in there, save your rainwater. It is more natural, neutral, and don't contain as much additives. And when you are fertilizing them, you can use azaleas or camellia fertilizers because those plants are also more acid-loving plants. Rabbit eyes are called rabbit eyes because of what? Can you kind of tell from the picture? The berry is pink before it turns blue, so that's where rabbit eyes are name come from. And really, pink lemonade is the only one that I think will truly do well here. Climax Premier have been touted and being sold here in nurseries. I don't see them as much because you can see on the less than 550 hour chill hour requirements. How often do we have that? Right, we thought in the past that 9A we have about 400 to 600 chill hours per year, but by and large we're more in the 400 range to maybe 450 when we're lucky, but we don't have enough chill hours for them to really do well. And you can protect against cold, but how do you create the chill hours unless you have sort of a chiller environment, right? So you can get it warmer a little bit easier than trying to make the tree outside colder. Buy the right variety again. Southern high bush, namesake, southern high bush. They are growing in a bush form when all of the blueberries are more in bush form than a tree form. Some of them I do see them more of a multi-trunk, but flare out. You want the shoots to grow for a few years, but then thin them out. Make sure once they're producing for a little while, they're not going to be as productive anyway. The canes themselves will naturally show aging and weakness, and you want to clean them out. We'll have Jewel, Rebel, Emerald, and Biloxi available. Again, all low chill hours, all proven to do really well here. And when planting them in containers, the ideal mix, or a recommended mix rather, is 1/3 peat moss, 1/3 perlite, and 1/3 pine bark. Okay. Over time, when you add amendments, make sure that you use the similar amount of mixture, and if you are truly low in acidity, you can add more peat moss. Blackberry, highly recommended. There are a lot of thornless varieties available now. Prime, Arc, Freedom, fruits on the first year's cane. But really, once you plant a blackberry, other than the very first year you plant it, every year you have old cane and new cane, so it really doesn't matter. But if you absolutely have to have something the first year, plant Arc Freedom is the variety to go. So we talked about first year cane, second year cane. Primal cane is really your year-on cane, and it grows to establish itself. And then when it branches out the next year, those branches are the ones that produce the flower, and the flowers then will grow the fruits. But next year, that same cane will be called florid cane because it's the second year cane. And after it fruits, you cut them away, because it doesn't really continue to grow. It naturally just weakens and dries out, and you have a lot of new canes coming out anyway that you want to make sure will grow next year for your new fruit. Blackberry can be susceptible to also iron deficiency or iron corrosis, and this is a condition where even if there's iron in the soil, the fruit tree roots will not be able to absorb the iron, or else it could naturally be missing iron. So you want to add something called a chelated product. EDDHA is the product that's recommended. We're also gonna have something called Big Daddy. I saw it on the list from our website. Big Daddy Blackberry. It's also another thornless upright blackberry, and the fruits are exceptionally large, sometimes 2 times the size of a normal standard blackberry. And you'll fruit during next summer. Now citrus, the root family of fruits. Huge selection just by the list you see here, even the names. From the little bit more, what I consider exotic, at least to the natives here. Kumquat, you eat the skin. I've eaten some sweet kumquat's flesh. It's actually edible. It's just sour. So if you can only have 1 or 2 varieties of plants, you can pick the plants that will give you the most of what you want. Skin, flesh, skin, juice, whatever, right? Preserve. All of the Asian varieties, Satsuma, tangerine, mandarin, have very thin, easy peel skins. Guess what? In parts of China, some of those are grown only for their skin. They're harvested when the skin is still green, and the locals and farmers will actually process those fruits and only save the skin, because the dry skin actually has way more value than the flesh. Look into them orange peel. You can actually see it in quite a bit of Asian recipes. They could be used for cooking, soup, for herbal tea, for a variety of culinary, even for medicinal uses. And many of them you see, they are hybrids. They're different varieties. Even lemon have hybrids. The Maya lemon that somebody I was talking to earlier today is actually a hybrid of lemon and orange. Lemons are not cold hardy at all, and for the most part, most of the citrus are not very cold hardy, and they don't do well in teens temperature, low 20s temperature, barely surviving. The hybrids sometimes are a little bit better at withstanding cold, like the Maya lemon. And you have different varieties available depending on the flavor that you want. Lime is the most cold sensitive of all citrus. Lower than 50 degrees, you should really start looking at protecting. Here's the challenge though. This winter season, what weather range or what weather temperature range do we have? 20 something to what? 80. So you're trying to protect something below 50. It's like, okay, one day protection on, next day off, or morning protection on, middle of the day protection off, evening protection on. It's pretty high input, right? But if you can have them, key limes are great. They have very intense flavor. Persian lime, larger variety, or you can have kaffir. Everything is useful in culinary uses. Leaves, juice, zest, all can be used. So some of these are really worth the effort. Grapefruit has also a lot of different varieties. We'll have Bloom Sweet and actually Ruby Red. Not real red, but Ruby Red is a extremely juicy and mildly sweet tart flavor grapefruit, which is widely available in grocery stores. Also, but I'm sure it's not as tasty if you grow them yourself. So get the fruit tree if you have the room. They can get pretty big. Navel oranges are pretty much all seedless. Every once in a while, the seedless oranges do still have a tiny seed here and there. Cara Cara is a good one with pink flesh, yellow rind, very, very juicy and low acidity. We have the dwarf variety available, and then the navel N33, much thicker rind, but very, very juicy as well. Mine again succumbed to the UV freeze, so I still haven't got over it and replaced it. Partly because, again, the input, right, amount of time. I have 2 citrus in pots right now, and they're still worth moving in and out. Sweet oranges, we'll have Republic of Texas and Valencia available. The Republic of Texas that we got is a standard size, and then we have the Valencia that is dwarf size. Mandarin, yes ma'am. I could, yes. Yeah, so it's one of the most cold-hardy variety of all oranges, and again, very flavorful, juicy. You can see this in more nurseries than some of the other varieties. At least used to be. I haven't really hunted for them recently, but yeah, Mandarin is one of those thin skin, easy peel ones I mentioned earlier. They're smaller, very, very sweet. And we have Pixie, Honey, and Clementine available. Pixie's tiny. They're lunchbox mandarins. And then Honey has this unique cinnamon and honey flavor. Clementine is great household plant. Fruit ripens pretty early. So all good selections to try out. Setsuma, extra note, harvest when rind is green. They're actually edible when the rind turns color, but it depends on what flavor profile you want in your fruit. Personally, I suggest you try them, right? Harvest them when it's green, taste them, take note of them. And then harvest it when it starts turning, it starts blushing a little bit, and then harvest it when it's actually turning quite orange in color. And you can see and taste the difference. Not everybody wants it when it's good. Personally, I enjoy them, but not as much as when it's actually in the middle stage, where it's partially green and partially orange. Not fully orange, because the flavor then starts getting to an intensity where it's not as pleasant to my palate. But you personally can, again, here's the beauty of it. You grow your own fruit, you get to enjoy it the way you like it. It's you. Do you?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are these citrus plants, do you recommend that we stick to the pots so we can move it in, or are they okay to plant outside?
Well, during the regular season, you want all your pots outside. But if you are talking about, so the question is whether or not they should be in pots or planted outside, you mean in the ground, right? You can have them in the ground because again, moving them in, it's a lot of efforts. And in pots, it's also more labor intensive from a watering perspective, and overall management it's a little bit easier just because they're smaller in size. You control them, but then that also means you have less production. So it's really a personal decision. You can have them in the ground with protection because every year we have some amount of freezing temperature that can severely damage them. If it gets to be, say, 20 and your cold hardiness is to 25, that extra 5 degrees may not kill it, but you will weaken it to a way where it maybe sheds 2-3 years of life. And next year, it may not produce much, right? So those are the choices and decisions you have to make. If you protect it and it lasts an extra 2-3 years, is it worth it to the several hours and material costs that you put in? Again, it's a choice. A lot of people ended up leaving them only in pots. I'm one of them, but then I'm also lazy, so I'm not gonna have very many. I'm going to the farmer's market and wherever grocery store, and I'm handing my money over, right? So at the end of the day, you have to be realistic about the amount of time and energy and resources that you're willing to put into it. Okay, so Tangerine will have Dancy, another great orange for easy peel and easy eating. And you see a lot of those varieties coming out of California, Halo and whatever other marketing names that they have. It's one of those Asian varieties. And Tangerine is a cross between orange and mandarin. So a hybrid can also be another hybrid, right? So back to the question earlier about whether or not you can breed your own, yes. Right, you know your parentage, you can improve upon what you had before. And some of this, people may or may not necessarily become a scientist, but it's a wonderful thing to do in your own science lab. And you can do it in the backyard, right? But try to control the environment. If you are gonna try it, actually bring specific flowers to pollinate each other so you know the parentage. And the amount of pollination that goes into the fruit sometimes is not fully known and documented. So again, take copious notes and record your observations. Here is a chart on the characteristic of common Texas citrus varieties out of Texas A&M University's nuts and fruit tree website. I have a few copies, 40 to be exact, front and back. One of the charts is exactly this one, and then the back chart is on diagnosis of common citrus problems. It's in the website. The website link will be emailed to you when the recording is available, so all of that information will be available. Talking about the website, there are other articles that the horticultural department at Texas A&M produced, and they're a wonderful resource. Most of them have a lot of details, not only describing the fruit trees themselves, you will have information on different varieties, growing conditions, how to plant them, how to maintain them, harvesting, so on and so forth, the disease management. So look into those websites. And our own website, our Master Gardener's website, has this wonderful booklet, 44 pages, that covers everything I cover and then some. Again, the link will be in the email, and you can pull your own copy for reference. Oh. All right, now we're moving into subtropicals and tropical fruits. Banana, beautiful plant, and a lot of us have them in our backyard as part of a landscaping plan from a realistic perspective, because it takes 15 to 18 months for it to really produce and bear fruit that's truly edible. I lucked out and I have it bear fruit 2 times, even though I have it flower more than twice out of the 7-ish, 10 years or so of actually growing them. With its long life cycle, every time we have a freeze, it pretty much dies to the ground, because the so-called trunk is actually a pseudostem, right? It grows from a corm, and it's very, very fast growing. Within a year, you will be a full-size plant. The thing is, it flowers on the 135th leaf that turns into the inflorescence that then starts growing the fruits. With a 15 to 18 month cycle, how many years do we have freeze-free temperature? Very rare. And when it's 25 feet tall or even 20 feet tall, trying to protect that baby, it gets a little bit challenging. But next year, what I may do is maybe chop it down to maybe about this high, tall, and then rub it and somehow protect it and see if next year I'll have enough where it comes from. Remember, it just keeps growing, right? It keeps growing. I chop off the top, the bottom still grows, and see if I like that. But we have some varieties that you can try, because the ones that we have are going to be smaller size. You can grow them in containers. This year we have one of the most unique bananas that's called Double Mahoy. It actually produces 2 flowering stalks at the end. And you can consider fig. I mentioned that earlier. One of my favorite, because it's one of the easiest to grow. It will die back in a freeze situation, but it will come back. And after Uri, my LSU Gold had a pretty full, abundant harvest same year. So it didn't seem to be damaged. And by the way, that poor baby, one of the prior hurricanes had split one of the major trunks in half. So both halves were hanging on with their dear life, but they all both got pretty strong. This is one where even when the cambium layer was damaged, there was enough from the rest of the trunks that it actually grows just fine. A lot of the figs though have multi-trunks or multi-branches, so you can cut off as many as you don't want and only leave a few. Make sure you send up new trunks, new shoots. Yes, sir.
Which would be the best in our area?
Which variety is the best in our area? There are a lot of them. You can try a ton. So I have a list here, but there's way more. You can check the Texas AgriLife website to see others. But
are they easy to graft off of existing trees?
there are people who do that, but remember they send up new branches. So if you graft them, guess what? If that trunk that you or branch that you grafted on is it's getting pretty old, because those branches do need to only have a shorter life cycle, right? So you can try them. And again, another beauty of having your own fruit trees at home is you can experiment. There are people who do experience grafting. Yes. I'm sorry. A best time to try to propagate when they're dormant, when there's no active growth. So you can do that and rub them, protect them, and so they can slowly recover. And then when they push out new growth, then they will be more easily adapted to recover and growing. With the figs, there's something also to consider is open eye and closed eye. So in the middle of the fig at the bottom, right, you see this dot. Most of the ones that do well here are the ones that's closed-eyed or near closed, because that eye can allow water in there, allow bacteria in there, allow insects in there. In some parts of the world where a wasp pollination for the fruits is required, you actually want them to be somewhat open-eyed when they are growing. But over here we grow what's called common fig. And we want them near closed eye, so we don't need the wasp pollination. There's 4 types of figs in Smyrna, the San Pedro, Capri. Yeah. All of this, only the common figs really grow here, so I didn't want to get too scientific about it. The varieties that we have here do not need any extra pollination. The fruit itself, it's really the flowers that it's the unfertilized fleshy flower tissue. So it's not truly a fruit, but when you open it up, you see the little tendrils in there. Those sometimes people who don't know, they're like, ooh, bugs. No, they're not. Your little flower tendrils in there. So that's what we're supposed to eat, right? Not a problem. And there is truly no wasp, except if you have one that's open eye, something got in there, and there could be little insects in there, but by and large, find the ones that's either semi-closed eye or closed eye, and you'll be fine. One thing about fig is that you do want to make sure you keep them watered during the summer. They don't tolerate drought very well, and if they are damaged in drought, they don't recover, at least for the year. Again, there will be new shoots coming up, but you're not going to have a very good crop. Jujube is like tiny apples. Can grow very well here, but it's a very thorny tree. Also has lots of suckers, but something to try. And you can eat them fresh while they're starting to have a little blush of a brown. Or when they turn fully brown, they're not overripe. They're just turning color. They're actually still quite tasty. And then if you have an abundance, you can actually dry them and eat them like snack. Or you can use them in soups and teas and whatnot. Has a lot of uses as well. Mulberry. Interesting fruit. Can have some of the largest fruits that is, as you can see on the bottom picture, well over 1.5 inches in size. But those trees, in order to really produce well, grows to be like 40, 50 feet tall, and spread could be that wide as well. So have some space. Now, of course, again, in your own environment, you can prune them severely. There's one where I've seen videos of farmers in Asia where the mulberry tree literally was pruned to a little bit of a stump and a little bit of the crown every single year because they want to be able to have the soft new branches coming out, and you can easily harvest them, right? So I have the tiny dwarf everberry at home, and they are not only dwarfing the size of the tree, they're dwarfing their fruits because the fruits is maybe half the size of a dime. And you can see how laborious that would be if you were to harvest. Well, you don't have to hand harvest every single piece. You can lay out some a sheet at the bottom of the tree, grab branches and shake them. The ones that are ripe will fall, and then you can collect them off of the sheet. It's a lot easier that way. My tiny one don't have a ton of space to grow, so it doesn't get loaded with tens of thousands of fruit. So I don't do the shaking too often, but I do every day, go out there and harvest a handful in the morning, evening, whenever, and snack them. So that works out. It has a sequential ripening time. It takes a while for it to actually fruit. Right now, actually, right before the fruits, it actually started fruiting too. So it has a long fruiting cycle, and it could fruit multi-season as well. So that's one that I highly recommend. Give it a try. I know a lot of people say that's bird fruit. I don't want to fight with the birds. That's fine. But if you do enjoy them, they're highly nutritious. Persimmon have astringent and non-astringent varieties. So the non-astringent ones are usually firmer. You can eat them off of the tree, sometimes even before they're fully ripened, and you wouldn't taste that puffiness in your mouth. The astringent ones, if you eat them not fully ripened, they absolutely will. Even when they're fully ripened, sometimes you still have an aftertaste in your mouth. But they're delicious and also very, very nutritious. One thing to note is there's an American native persimmon. Those actually, if you have the chance to get one and let the fruit mature to where it almost naturally falls off the tree, they're actually very tasty. They're tiny. I think my church has one. I couldn't tell because I didn't plant it, and yet every year it has a loaded a tree full of tiny persimmons on there. They are tasty. They're the size of a little plum, and sometimes even smaller. Great wilderness food for nature. Avocado, not hardy until mature. A lot of people do grow them from seed because it actually can easily germinate from seed. The tree needs at least 2 to 3 years of protection when young. And in order to grow a lot of fruits, it's best eventually that the avocado trees goes into the ground. The trunk and stems are susceptible to sunburn. And varieties, usually you'll hear type A, type B. Type A flowers in the morning as a, just make sure I get it right, as a female. It closes in the evening, opens in the afternoon the next day as a male flower. Type B is the other way around. Opens day 1 in the afternoon as a male flower, closes overnight, opens in the morning next day as a female flower. And we talked about pollination required earlier. If you have only one type of avocado tree, and this is the cycle you are in, you need 2 because you don't know which one is hanging on the flower to pollinate. But honestly, in our weather, we talked about in our winter from potentially high teens to 80 degrees and plus. In order for this cycle to really work like clockwork, it needs to remain roughly around 70 degrees in a very stable environment for the flower cycle to work like that, like clockwise. So in our environment with this fluctuation in temperature, it doesn't matter. By one, you'll get male and female flower at different times of the day, and you'll be fine. You don't need to worry about what type of flower they are. So we have several different varieties available. All are really good, different sizes, different skin color, different texture. Pick the ones you like. Lokwa also had another name called a Japanese plum or melon. It has very long leaves. You see the picture in the low bottom there. Could be upwards of 12 to sometimes 18 inches long. The leaves are actually also edible as tea, not to eat on. Think about sweet bay laurel. It's used culinary, but not to eat the actual leaves, but for cooking. Well, the leaves of the lokwa, you can dry them and make tea with them. Also has a lot of medicinal benefit. Both the fruit and the leaves can be used to make cough syrup and candies and whatnot. It's actually a primary ingredient in a particular Asian cough medicine. But the fruits themselves are wonderfully flavorful. The problem with this one is that it flowers early, usually during our freezing season. And sometimes you can lose your entire crop when we have a freeze and they're flowering. Many a time, some of the flowers will survive and you still have wonderful fruit. Now, you don't see them commercially available in grocery store much, do you? They are very delicate. If you do see them, they are individually placed in an eggshell-like type of container. And when you eat them, your fingers, you peel the thin skins away, but your fingers will actually stain, not from the juice itself, but from the oxidation. The flesh, though, is wonderfully flavorful, and you usually would have 2 or 3 large seeds in there. And so a lot of people, from a commercial viability perspective, the transportation and the upkeep is really hard. And so if you have them in your garden, it's actually much better. It's a beautiful ornamental tree, even if you don't get a lot of fruit production. Upright, it's nice shape, and it doesn't grow very, very tall. And of course, you can prune them if it does. Olives, the only ones you really hear about is the Avicenna. Avicenna can be very productive. The fruits are small. It requires brining and a long salted processing for them to remove all of that tannin, so you can enjoy the fruit. So grow them if you have an interest for the process to enjoy the fruit, but otherwise they could also be a beautiful evergreen tree for the landscape. I had one where when I was early in my journey of learning to garden, and I didn't plant it well enough, so it didn't like the clay soil. The roots literally grow sideways, so I had a tree here and my roots were going 90 degrees everywhere. And hurricane comes, guess what? It was not properly anchored, so it leaned one way. And after a while, I'm like, dang, what do I do with this thing? Well, I yank it up and I compost it. So plant it the right way, again, considering what we got to deal with. Pomegranate. Wonderful, wonderful fruit, but a lot of people don't like the seeds in them. Well, you can pick different pomegranate fruit trees. Some of them had the hard seeds, and some of them had kind of semi-hard, some of them had softer seeds. They like Mediterranean weather, but luckily over here, even if they die to the ground every year, they come back and still bear fruit the same year. So definitely something to consider. They have a lot of branches, and I've tried braiding them together to make a trunk. They do actually fuse together. Here's the problem. One year we had Hurricane Wind, right? And I had a tree loaded of fruits hanging on there, and the whole darn thing was so heavy, the entire thing snapped. And of course, I lost everything. So try the tree way, but the fruits are big and heavy, and depending on how strong the wind is and whatnot, it may be a little bit challenging, but because it's not a natural trunk. So turning them into a trunk form could be counterproductive. But it's always a good science experiment. Again, you're in your own home environment. Do whatever that pleases you. So we have 4 different varieties. Some of them have darker skin, some of them have lighter skin, some of them have more tart taste, others sweeter taste, hard seed, soft seed. Take your pick. They're different varieties. And all low chill hours. Now, one thing about a pomegranate too is we have a lot of rain during the summer, and by then you usually have fruits hanging on them. With the rain, it soaks up the water, and guess what? The seeds inside starts expanding and growing. The rind on the outside, though, don't absorb water and don't expand fast enough to holding all of the growth inside, and guess what? You have a split fruit. And usually at that point in time, the juice inside is not sweet enough. But if it splits and you still want it, harvest it then, because a lot of insects are gonna go to it, and you're not gonna have much of a harvest on that split fruit. You can still save parts of it though. Scoop out the sections that's exposed, but with that, I tend to prefer smaller fruit, because larger fruit take a long time to mature and ripen, and you have way too long of a period of time for things to go wrong. But that's a personal preference. Again, you experiment with it and what's best. There are a lot of other notable fruits that different people tried and have success. I've seen one church member who had a Logan tree for well over 20 years, and very happy to show off pictures of the tree finally have bunches, literally bunches of Logan hanging on there. And then one lady that had literally like 20, 30 something, so she hosted a dinner party and one person per fruit, and then one of the guests says, she's so stingy, only one, and she's like, that's 5 years of my work and you get to enjoy what you go away. I'm like, yeah, this is people that don't understand gardening. This one is worth $100 a piece because the amount of work and resources you put into it. But again, right, input, the joy that you get from it. I mean, she was so proud of the one bunch, well, 1.5 bunch that she got, that everybody get to have one single piece of homegrown Logan. So,
Can you point that out?
huh?
Can you point out which one's the longest?
Logan, it's the third one.
Which one of those you asked?
What's it look like?
It's not available
Oh, okay.
on there. I will see.
I just didn't know what it was.
All right, everybody who's got the phone, do a research. Time to do research. Interactive session. Yeah, it's a very sweet fruit. Those you usually do see in Asian grocery stores. It has a, usually the big one's about the size of a thumb. And they're using a cluster just like, kind of like grapes, except the stems are a lot harder than the grape bunches. Has big seed inside. Some of them have smaller seeds, and the seeds themselves sometimes are also dry as for medicinal use. Longer themselves are extremely sweet for the good varieties anyway, and the flesh is white with the skin outside, the shell outside. So the fruits usually are well protected. Grocery ones sometimes are frozen or sometimes soaked in a solution. So when you get them home, just make sure that they are actually doing what they're supposed to for you, because sometimes within a day or two they'll start molding. But what is it? The last few classes, the question is about whether or not anyone has pawpaw here. Anybody want to raise their hand? You have seen them? Okay. You have seen.
Yeah, they're in the refrigerator. I was gonna ask you, having too many chill out, and I had them in the refrigerator for some time, and I forgot that they were there, and I want to plant them, but I don't know. Yeah.
So the comments was whether or not the seed was chilled too long. It's too long. It's possible because everything has a shelf life, and depending on whether or not the humidity in the fridge is to its liking and so on and so forth, there are a variety of factors. But in all of the classes we have, there were a few people in classes that actually had them and has grown them successfully, but you don't see them very often by and large because it also requires a pollinator. It's a big size tree, and it's overall, again, our crazy climate just doesn't bode well for them. But they are worth a try if you can, again, have more of a controlled environment for them. Dragon fruit is one that's gaining a lot of popularity in recent years, and we'll have some available. This needs to be absolutely grown in pots. They're very frost sensitive. And they are self-fertile, self-pollinating, self-sterile, which requires a cross-pollination species. So self-fertile, it can pollinate itself. You don't really need to get involved. Self-pollinating, the pollens will pollinate, but you need to give it some assistance, right? Okay, so we know the difference. And there are different varieties, and you can see the skin color, the flesh color, could all have different variations and depending on the variety. Well worth the exercise, but again, requires some protection and some truly tender loving care when it's cold, because it takes a few years to produce, so you really don't have the luxury of like pomegranate. Okay, if you guys don't come back next year, still give me some. Guava, actually I see quite a bit of it growing here. I had one where he produced for me 1 year, many years ago in my old house. Excellent taste, and then the next year it died to the ground, and then thereafter every single year it died to the ground, and so I haven't had any fruit ever since. Because I am lazy, I didn't protect it, but again, if you have time, you can protect it, and you can grow them, and they're really well worth the time, because the fruit is very fragrant. Now you see seeds in them, but we are used to eating strawberry, blackberry, so this should not really be that much of an issue. Some people are very particular about seeds, but again, pomegranate, same thing, right? So we don't mind our seeds. Yeah, mango, I mentioned to somebody earlier about this one person in the northern part of the county, Perry County, had a mango tree for over 25 years, and 2-3 years ago he had a Facebook post about him taking 3 guys for 3 days to build a shelter for his mango tree, and he mentioned that's the last time he'll ever do that because he's done. But he has wonderful amounts of mangoes, and in all years past, it has been well worth it. Beautiful, tasty fruit, very, very nutritious, but you can't eat too much of it or else it will be somewhat inflammatory. Passion fruit vine, it's really a vine, and beautiful landscape plant. If you don't get to the fruiting stage, enjoy the flower as well. Some people harvest them also for making teas and whatnot. So lots of different options for why you should grow the vine. The flower is just gorgeous, different colors as well. And there are some of the others to consider. This red pineapple, special red, very unique, something that will definitely captures attention. It can be grown in pots, and once it grows, you cut it off of the top, right? And the top itself, if the plant guy can also be propagating up down the propagation from just the top, but again, protect them well enough for it to grow full season. There's the sugar apple, papaya. Papaya, a lot of people actually have papaya. I visited one lady in her Heights area home, and she has a male tree, female tree, and then a hermaphrodite, which is a tree that has both male and female flowers in them. And so she has all 3 of them in her own little backyard garden. Can be done. Moringa is one more of a African variety, and African plant, not technically considered a fruit tree, even though it do produce fruits like this. It's more for cooking than for fresh eating. But the leaves are edible, and actually preferred eating as fresh leaves as a salad. A lot of the natives use it in cooking as a stew and whatnot. That actually destroy a lot of nutrient. So eating it as a salad is great. And then of course you've seen them being harvested and using dried and using powder. Black pepper is one to try. Also another vine. It's an under storage plant, and the berries, once they dry, they become the pepper that we're used to. So when we're looking at growing fruit trees, you have to look at the site where you're going to have the tree. Limited space, patio is fine, and also for protection. If you plant them in the ground, make sure that it has an area where it has at least 6 hours of sun, 8 hours or more is even better. And make sure that there is no obstruction nearby or potential obstruction nearby. You see pictures of trees eventually grow into fences, into rooftops and whatnot. Or power poles. Don't know why we're still planting trees right next to power poles. You hear about all of this California fires from power lines and whatnot. And with all these trees, you can't get to maintain the poles. Plant them away from potential hazard, and also make sure if the underground areas are also clear, you're not going to dig into gas lines and whatnot. Before you plant, if you could take soil samples from different areas of your space and send it into a lab, we'll provide a link for that as well. And make sure that you know what's in the ground. This will test for different elements within the soil, but it will not tell you whether or not it's got disease and whatnot. So it will tell you what type of elements is available in your soil. And that way, if you want to fertilize or amend your soil, you know what to add and what is already abundant that you don't want to touch. And then also make sure that it also drains well. If it's all of the clay soil and you really can't add enough organic matter fast enough, build up a berm, build up raised beds, bringing the soil right. That way you can control what goes into it. Because again, like I mentioned about my olive tree, it cannot penetrate the clay and it's gonna try to find a way to survive, and it may not be desirable for you ultimately. And also, make sure it has enough room for air flow, and then it doesn't, again, intrude into anything else. And then whether or not it needs another pollinator, so you have total space. This is a picture for how to plant, and also I have some sheets if you want to take a copy. This article is within our website as well as this document. Plant the fruit tree at the same depth as the pot itself, but twice as wide. And make sure that the edges of the soil are loosened enough. Sometimes when you spade in and you scoop, you actually create a really nice smooth space, and guess what? You have a little pot or a bathtub in there, and when lots of water comes in, it just sits in here soaking wet because water doesn't penetrate. So once you dig out the area, use a fork and punch in a lot more to loosen up all of that soil around it so the water can penetrate. And then you have to prune the tree. Usually you'll prune right when you plant. Cut it down small because the tree needs to spend all of its energy growing the roots, not to grow branches or leaves just yet. Make sure you establish yourself, and then you can slowly thin out the branches over time. And once the trees become a lot bigger and has a lot more branches, you gotta think out a lot of different things. The suckers, things that don't have a good angle, because if it goes straight up, it doesn't produce as well. Ideally, it has about a 45-degree angle. Sometimes you can hang weights on them to bend the branches over a little bit. And then irrigation. Make sure you have a reliable water source. Some of us have well water. Make sure you know what's in that well water. If it has too much of some kind of mineral or whatever other composition that does not work well with the tree, it may not be helpful. City water, we talked about it, has a lot of chlorine. Rainwater always is the best, but we don't have enough usually to sustain a lot of trees. So just make sure that you get to it consistently with either emitters, any sort of drip system or irrigation system, or else you can pull the water hose to it on a regular basis. And then fertilization, we talked about the love schedule. And make sure that you water when it's starting to grow, while it's flowering, while it's fruiting, and then stop fertilizing after it's harvest. Yes, ma'am.
I usually keep all my vegetables pretty, and I blend it up in water, and I put that in my garden.
Yes, so the comment is to use kitchen scrub, clean kitchen scrubs, blend them in and mix it in water. Yes, that's good. That's good. Now those scrubs, because they're blended, they're easier to decompose. So it's fine. And then make sure you also have weed control. Weed takes a lot of the water away, so you don't want your tree competing with anything nearby when it doesn't have to. Give it the best condition possible. And we talked about protecting it from weed eaters and also potentially from critters. The other thing to work through is managing through disease and pests. A lot of the fruit trees have a lot of natural disease and pests because who doesn't want lovely, delicious fruit, right? We do, so it's nature. Work with some of the bacterial challenges, even the sun, the wind, borers, cankers, I mean, you name it. There are a lot of different issues that fruit trees are facing. We do have a hotline. If you have questions on things that you don't know about, take pictures, record them, send them in to us. We can help you diagnose. With the citrus, one thing I want to make sure everybody remembers is wherever you buy it, this is the county they stay. Do not move them away from other county. Do not move any citrus from another county into Fort Bend, please. We have citrus canker issue, which is a bacterial issue, and then citrus greening that is spreading. And it has damaged a lot of crops in California and Florida. We try to control them here in Texas as best as we can, but they are spreading, so please, no, nothing in, nothing out. Wherever you buy them, wherever you keep them, which is here. And then steps with diagnosing, look for the normal host characteristic, look for symptoms, look for when things happen, record them, report them, and that way you can have better way of solving the problem. And there's the hotline. Also, this is what we call the integrated pest management, right? Try to do natural remedy as best as you can. Find a variety that works here. Find a rootstock that fights the condition that we may deal with. And environmentally, and then last resort, chemical. And while you are looking for pests, also make sure that there are beneficial insects in the garden that we want to keep. Those are our friends. Make sure we don't eradicate those.
What about assassin bugs?
Assassin bats are good. They are usually loners, so if you see a cluster of them, those are more likely the leaf-footed bugs. So again, resources will be sent to you, and here are some upcoming events. Most notably, the upcoming Saturday is our annual fruit tree sale. So Valentine's Day, bring your sweethearts to us with you, and have a fun day out picking fruit trees, and keep your love blossoming. And here is a QR code for a survey for today's class. Feel free to put in comments. Feel free to also share in what other future topics you might like to see that is not on the list. Thank you very much for your time. Yes?
To the fruit tree.
Yeah, so for those of you who are ready to go, Miss Mary Parker right there will take you to the demo garden. Please follow her. Those of you who have individual questions, feel free to hang around and chat with me. And thank you very much for the class.